So the Leaning Tower of Pisa is our next example. And this is a great example because when you look at the Leaning Tower of Pisa, you can see that this is a large effort. I mean, 8 stories tall, 207 columns. It took them 200 years to build this tower. And what a lot of people, I think, don't realize is that the Leaning Tower of Pisa is just one part of a 4 building cathedral complex. The people of Pisa came together and they wanted to build a cathedral, I'm sure to give glory to God, but also because they wanted to show off a little bit. You don't build a complex like that if you don't want to show off a little bit. And so they had a goal, you can imagine, of putting together this cathedral complex that they thought was going to be the crown jewel of Pisa. It was going to bring people into Pisa from all over the place. And they built all of these buildings and they worked on this tower. And for 200 years, they built this tower. And you can just imagine that when they were done, they finally finished it off. They cleared away all the construction tape and the orange cones and all of that that they undoubtedly had during the construction period. And they looked at this tower, and you can just imagine showing this off to the town officials, and the town officials going, is it just, is that kind of, seems like it's leaning a bit. And indeed, it was leaning a bit. And so when they finished the construction around the year 1300, this tower was leaning over. They used every available engineering technique at their disposal, and they tried to straighten the tower. They tried to strengthen the foundation. They tried to push it. They tried to pull it. They tried to even it out. They tried to weight it down on one end. They tried to shore up some of the construction so that it would be straight. And throughout all of it, well, it just kept leaning. And so this leaning tower started to become a little bit well known. And people started to come to look at the Leaning Tower. And now, of course, it is a tourist destination. People go from all over the place. They want to see the Leaning Tower. They want to take that picture where it looks like they're holding it in place. And the officials were still worried that perhaps this thing would fall over. And so for a while it was closed. You couldn't go in. And they continued to use, as engineering and architectural science advanced, they kept using new and better techniques, and they kept trying to figure out how to straighten this thing out so that this tower would be preserved. And eventually, they have it stable. But it still leans. And it would be easy. It would be very easy to get caught up in, we wanted to build this beautiful cathedral complex, and here it is 700 years later. That thing still isn't straight. Like that's a failure. Like, we did not build the tower we wanted with all of the columns, with all of the detail to really bring people in. However, as we have talked about in earlier parts of this presentation, you don't want to get so focused on the details that you miss out on the goal. Keep your eye on the prize, right? Let's use that old cliche. When you are looking at something like this, where you're thinking this could be a failure because we wanted to build this tower and we didn't do it, was the tower the goal? No, of course not. The goal was they wanted to build something that would be so unique, so amazing, that it would bring people to Pisa from all over the world. Well, what do they have? They have a leaning tower that brings people in from all over the world. People go to Pisa, Italy to see this tower. What else is in Pisa, Italy? Exactly. People know about the Leaning Tower. And so, while it would be very easy to see it as a failure, if they look at the goal and think, the end result, what we really wanted to accomplish here, we did that. We are bringing people in. They can see the cathedral. They can see what we have done. They can see our architectural marvel. And it's because the tower is leaning. So, Don't get caught up in the details. Celebrate those successes, right? We learn from our failures and celebrate our successes. We've been saying that all along. And so we learn from our failures, and every time they straightened the towers, they learned a little something, and they tried to apply something else, and they tried to learn from all of these different failures for 700 years. And what they end up with is celebrating the success of this leaning tower that brings people in from all over the world. And that is what we need to focus on. We need to focus on what was our major objective? What did we want to do? Don't look at the pieces, the steps in the plan. Those can throw you off course. Maybe a couple of the steps failed. Maybe a couple of the steps didn't turn out the way you wanted. Maybe your path had to change. But because we own our obstacles, we can say, okay, that was an obstacle that we got around. The obstacle was the tower wasn't straight, but we got around it because we embraced it. We made the leaning tower the famous thing. We have the postcards, we have the view, we have spots where people can stand with their hands to hold it up. This is what we need to do. We need to own our obstacles so that we can learn from those failures and really celebrate the success so that we don't have to get bogged down in is the tower straight, and we can focus on, are we bringing people to Pisa, Italy?